Hey guys, welcome to Cray Outdoors. In today's video, I'm just going to go over a quick tip that, at least in my opinion, will help you catch more pike. So right here we have laid out my favorite pike lures. That's not the tip, but I'll go over them real quick. This is a Rapala X-Wrap, my all-time favorite pike lure. Here we have a small collection of Daredevil Spoons. Also, a great pike lure, very versatile. This one's not a real Daredevil spoon. I believe that one's just some knockoff brand. These two are real, genuine Daredevils. These are really nice spoons, actually. They came out of an old tackle box that I found in the garage, and my dad let me keep them. And we have the Crocodile Spoon in Fire Tiger color. Again, one of my favorite pike. These are my three favorites: the Daredevil Spoon, Rapala X-Wrap, and the Crocodile Spoon in Fire Tiger. Ironically, the Crocodile Spoon, even though it's a spoon and not a jerkbait, has a very similar action when you slash it to the Rapala X-Wrap. But anyway, here's the tip. So this is really more or less just a confidence thing, but it's one of those things that I honestly think makes a difference. We have here a couple packages of red dressed hooks that we're going to put on all of these lures. So I used to have an old Daredevil spoon that had a dressed hook on it, and I always felt like I caught more fish with that spoon than I do with the Daredevil spoons that didn't have a dressed hook. And in the same way, I think one of the things that makes the X-Wrap so effective for pike is, believe it or not, that dressed hook. Pike are very turned on by the color red. That's why I bought red dressed hooks. And yeah, it just helps it mimic the blood or a bleeding, dying, struggling bait fish, that hook with that dressing wiggling around. The other thing is pike have a very strong lateral line sense. What the lateral line sense does is it works kind of like sonar for them. They can feel things moving in the water column, and with that dressing on the hook, it helps your lure just displace a little bit more water, and helps attract pike both visually and what they can sense with their lateral line sense. And their lateral line sense also, it makes pike very, very accurate. So when your hook is displacing water, especially on a spoon like this, they'll go right for that hook, because that hook is putting off is helping to put off vibration in the water, and they'll strike right at that hook, as opposed to striking the bait head first, which is they might do if you don't have a dressed hook on there. So I think it helps you with hookup ratio, and I think it helps generate strikes. So I think using a dressed hook will definitely help you to catch more pike. So in terms of hooks, I like hooks that are, when I'm pike fishing, I like hooks that are not too expensive and not too cheap. It's a good idea to replace your hooks anyway, because a lot of times these knockoff brand spoons will come with very, very cheap hooks that are very brittle and break very easily. Part of the way they get the cost down is, they give you garbage hooks. A lot of times they're very dull as well. This hook here is actually, this one isn't too terrible, but it's pretty dull. Pike have very, very hard jaws. You want a very sharp hook that you can drive into that hard, bony jaw. However, you don't want a hook that is too expensive, because a very expensive hook isn't going to give it all. It will not bend. It's designed to not bend, so so you don't miss fish is the idea. However, anybody that knows anything about pike fishing knows you're fishing as close to the snags as you possibly can. You're fishing right next to logs. You're throwing over submerged timber. You're fishing next to log jams. You're putting your bait in the danger zone. And spoons, and especially jerk baits like the X-Wrap, are not cheap. And if you're using hooks that are too expensive, you're going to be breaking off and losing a lot of lures. Where if you're using 30, 50 pound test, and you're using a hook that's not too expensive, most of the time when you get snagged, you can bend your hook back and get your lure back. I actually really like the hooks that these Rapala X-Wraps come with. They're very, very, part of the reason they're one of my favorite lure. Yeah, they're perfect because they bend pretty easy, but at the same time, they're very, very sharp, and they almost never break. But, oops, get it in front of the camera. But they bend pretty easy, so a lot of times it's easy to get your lure back when you do snag them up. So I kept that in mind when buying these hooks. My favorite dressed hooks used to actually be these eagle claw ones. I could not find them. Probably the most cost-effective way to do it, actually, if you have a vise and, you know, the gear for tying flies or tying things like this, your best bet is probably to buy some, you know, budget but still decent hooks like eagle claw hooks and tie your own dressing on them. These here, I think, they still weren't cheap. They were like I believe it was $12 for a package on Amazon, but they actually look very, very nice and seem decent quality. These are Brew. Yeah, they're Brew Outdoors hooks. I think they're from Taiwan or something like that. Like I said, I just found them on Amazon. You can actually order the VMC X-Wrap hooks too. I think they were a little bit more expensive than these, but you can actually buy the hooks that the very hooks that they put on these X-Wrap lures. So you might be asking, you already have a dressed hook on that X-Wrap. Why do you need to replace it? Well, the last pike I caught did a number on this thing. First of all, the dressing on that's almost gone compared to a new fresh hook. And the other issue is that pike that I had, I did a number trying to get the hook out of him. It was actually the pike that I kept. He swallowed it so deep. And the hooks are definitely pretty dull, and they've been bent back and forth several times now on this lure. And because these hooks are so dull now, I think that's actually one of the things that cost me that muskie. So before it costs me another fish, I want to get to replacing the hook, and having that nice new dressed hook on there will be nice, because you know, you can see the difference between the new hook and the old hook. The dressing's pretty well shot on that. So what we're going to do, if you never invested in one of these things, getting a hook separating tool. This is actually like a multi-fishing tool. It's got pliers on it, it's got the hook separator, it's got a little cutter on it. This came with a fishing reel that I bought. Yeah, these things make life so much easier. One of my most hated tasks was swapping out hooks, but with this thing, makes it very easy. It's so easy. The hook just bends right like nothing, and boom, you're good to go. Rotate the old hook off, and as you start rotating the old hook off, easiest to start rotating the new hook on. Oops. Easier said than done. Especially on pike lures. You know, when you're switching out hooks on little trout and steelhead lures, that's definitely a much bigger pain. But with pike lures, which are, you know, a little bit bigger in stature, pretty easy. Of course, be careful not to hook yourself. Boom. Just like that, we are good to go. Brand new dressed hook for my Rapala X-Wrap, and can't wait to catch some pike with this thing this spring. Okay, next we have the Daredevil Spoon, and this one, as I mentioned, is the knockoff Daredevil Spoon that came with some pretty chintzy looking hooks, so it's definitely important that we replace the hook on this one. I have a feeling this hook would break pretty easily if we hooked into a big pike. And there we go. Just going to do the same thing. Probably not going to show you this process with all of the lures, just the first couple, so you get the idea. With this one, we bumped up the size of our hooks. We're using size 4 hooks. On the Daredevil Spoons, we're going to use the size 6 treble hooks. On the X-Wrap is what we used on that, and the Crocodile Spoon. So just keep in mind to order the proper size hook for the lure that you have. The easiest way to do it is if you have multiple pike lures like me, just go ahead and order, you know, 2 or 3 different sizes. Where were we? Oh, here we go. Grab one of these. Get the next hook started while that hook's coming off. There we go. Can be a challenge sometimes. These Daredevil spoons actually also make a great spoon for ice fishing. Now, when you're ice fishing, I would say it's not as important to have that dressed hook, simply because I usually, the most effective way I've found to use Daredevil spoons and the Crocodile Spoon jigging for pike while you're ice fishing is to go ahead and throw a minnow, either a minnow or some cut bait at the end of that, and jig that spoon around. And yeah, I find that's the most effective way to use these spoons under the ice, in which case I really don't think that the dressing makes that much of a difference, because you know it's the minnow, or it's the minnow that you have on there that's going to really attract the pike and generate the strikes, and the spoons just sort of help as a visual thing, because it keeps the bait moving up and down and they can see it from a distance away. The Crocodile Spoon also makes a great ice fishing spoon. Of course, you can't use Rapala X wrap underneath the ice, but there are jigging Rapalas, and jigging Rapalas do work great for pike under the ice as well. So there you have it. This is the finished product. I think these spoons look a lot more appealing from a pike's perspective. Like I said, pike are very turned on by the color red. They have a very strong lateral line sense. They're very turned on by water displacement, and these dressed hooks are going to help attract them in both of those ways. So I'm very excited to use these lures this spring. These lures might even get a couple looks under the ice. Like I said, ice fishing, I don't think having the dressed hook makes as much of a difference, but certainly they'll be ready to go once the open water season hits. We're going to probably get rid of these two hooks here. This was that cheap hook that came off of this cheap pike spoon here. Like, this pike spoon here was about a dollar, I think, at Walmart or the Dollar Tree or something like that, where these spoons are probably $10, $8 to $10 spoons, potentially more, depending on where you get them from. If you get them from a little local bait shop, they could be as much as $15 for a genuine Daredevil spoon. And like I said, when you're pike fishing, you're throwing these things into submerged trees and tree stumps and getting as close as you can to the snags as possible, and you end up getting snagged a lot and losing a fair amount of lures. So I think it's economically efficient to simply buy a really cheap spoon and replace the hooks. I think is the most cost-effective way to do that, because a lot of times these spoons work just as well. They're just as good a quality as the Daredevil spoons. They just come with really garbage hooks. Anyway, so we're going to get rid of these hooks. Again, that cheap hook and the hook that was pretty well shot from that X-Wrap. It's gotten pretty dull and been bent back and forth several times. And it's amazing I still have this lure, actually. And these hooks here we're going to recycle. I'll use these on tip-ups while I'm ice fishing. I also use treble hooks catfish fishing. I'll throw, you can use treble hooks to put chicken livers on. So that's what I plan to do with these, and these, as I said, these are going to get thrown away, and whenever you're disposing of treble hooks, make sure you do so properly. I like to stick them inside of a crushed can or a box or something where they're not going to stab people that don't realize that there's hooks in there. So, yeah, the only other time I will replace my hooks with dressed hooks is topwater. Topwater lures like poppers, spooks. Again, I think having that dressed hook gives another something visual on top of the water, makes it look like a dying frog or a dying bait fish, and really helps to generate strikes from both pike, pickerel, and bass. That's really the only other time I'll switch out the hooks, is pike lures and topwater lures. Bass and trout, they can be weird. Pike are not a very emotional fish, where bass and trout, well, I don't know if emotional is the word, but they can be weird. I think sometimes having a dressed hook can be a good thing, and sometimes it can be a bad thing. So generally, it's easiest, I think, to not bother going through the hassle, because it's, you know, a 50-50 whether it's going to make a difference or not when you're fishing for bass and trout. It can be a bad thing, can be a good thing, can be a neutral thing, where I think pike, it's pretty much always a good thing 100% of the time to have a dressed hook. So that's why I'll switch it out on my pike lures and on my topwater lures, because again, when you're using topwater, I think it's pretty much 100% of the time a good thing. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope this helps you to land some more pike in the future. And really, this is this helps for muskie and pickerel as well. Anything in the pike family, anything in the Essox genus. I think a dressed hook a red dressed hook will help you to catch some more fish. So hope this video helps. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you've not already, and I'll catch you in the next video.